Set it up. It'll do two things. First of all, it allows you to say to every student in your state, don't tell me it's about money. It's about desire, it's about work, it's about ambition, but if you're willing to work, we're going to have a place for you to go to school that you will get through with no debt. Second, it will benchmark the cost of your current system, and you will be staggered at how much money you are wasting propping up inefficient, bureaucratic, unnecessarily expensive institutions whose primary power is their ability to get the alumni to tell you to send them more money. And you'll suddenly have a real challenge. Because the truth is, we could educate this country better, more rapidly, and more effectively for less money, not more money, but it would change the system and the bureaucracies will scream to high heaven. Scott Gottlieb was right in talking to you about health, which is obviously the biggest single growth center in every state budget. Let me just say that Insider Advantage just completed a poll, and Matt Towery, who is their top analyst and spokesperson, is here today. When they asked the question, do you trust the federal government to be able to run a health system, 26% of the American people said yes. When asked whether or not the American people believe that there is significant fraud and waste in Medicaid and Medicare, 73% said that there was either very significant or somewhat significant fraud and waste. When asked whether you thought the government should solve the problem of fraud and waste in the current federal programs before starting a new program, 61% said solve the fraud first. Now, one of the folks who works with us at the Center for Health Transformation, who many of you know, Jim Frogue, has a new book which we are publishing electronically today and will publish in hard copy next month. It's called Stop Paying the Crooks. Now, I know it's bold, it's out on the edge, but I want you to understand how big this is. This goes back to 2 + 2 = 4. Our estimate is that between $70 and $120 billion a year of Medicare and Medicaid is fraud. I'm not talking about marginal errors. I'm not talking about technical mistakes. I'm talking about a dentist in New York State who filed 982 procedures in one day. I'm talking about a doctor who filed 4 colonoscopies on the same patient in one day. To which my only reaction was, I hope that is fraud. I'm talking about 5 pizza parlors in South Florida that had successfully filed as HIV/AIDS transfusion centers and gotten money from the federal government because it is so incompetent at managing Medicare and Medicaid. People tell you that the federal government's less expensive as an administrator than insurance companies. That's right, because it doesn't administer anything. It sends the checks. If you add in the fraud in the federal program, it is the most expensive administration in American health care. And New York State, the New York Times has estimated, 10% of Medicaid is pure fraud. That's $4.4 billion a year. So we think the idea we're going to raise $1.5 trillion in new revenue in order to pay for a program the federal government can't run today is absolutely, totally wrong. In addition, Dave Merritt runs a project at American Solutions on health-based health reform. We believe you could take as much as $550 billion over the next decade out of the cost of Medicare by moving to better practices at lower cost. There really are dramatic examples around the country of institutions doing brilliant jobs of solving health problems for dramatically less money so people live longer, live better, live more independently, and do so for less cost. And that's the kind of continuous reform we ought to have, not building another federal bureaucracy. Laura Lynn, who's here today, runs a project in Columbus, Georgia, working with Novo Nordisk and others, in which we have a community-based diabetes program where we believe we're going to make major breakthroughs in helping manage diabetes, which is the largest single cost program in the federal government, 1 out of every $4 of Medicare. Michelle Stein is running an Alzheimer's Solutions project. In every one of your state budgets, Alzheimer's is going to be a bigger and bigger factor in the cost of long-term care. It's an enormously painful disease. My sister-in-law's mother has Alzheimer's. It's very difficult. Many of you know it lasts a long time. The current estimate for the federal government alone is that Alzheimer's between now and 2050 will cost $20 trillion. It is going to cost a significant amount for every state. We have an Alzheimer's Solutions Project in which 3 Nobel Prize-winning scientists and 125 other neuroscientists have come together with us to develop a program which they believe could lead to ending Alzheimer's as a threat around 2020 or 2025. Not only would that be an enormous human blessing, but it would probably save the federal government between $8 and $10 trillion, an amount which makes even the stimulus package look tiny. But that requires changing the Budget Act to be able to actually invest in the research. It requires changing the way the National Institutes of Health are run to actually have a program that's focused on finding a solution. Real changes to get a real solution that would save your state an enormous amount of money. And I hope you'll look at the Alzheimer's Solution Project and considering offering a resolution in your state supporting those concepts. Finally, on health, we have, with tremendous effort by Wayne Oliver on malpractice reform, Dr. John Gill of Dallas, Texas is helping him. One quick example. Texas passed a very dramatic malpractice reform. They've had 4,000 doctors move into the state. They've had a drop in malpractice insurance. They've had a drop in defensive medicine costs. There are places in the Rio Grande Valley that had not had a doctor for 20 years that now have doctors. A friend of mine in Oklahoma said they now have the worst of all worlds. They're losing their doctors to Texas, and the Texas trial lawyers are moving to Oklahoma. Let me just wrap all this up, and thank you very much for this kind of opportunity, but I want to go back and make the following very simple points. We are in the worst economy since the Great Depression. We are too expensive a country with too great a burden of government, incapable of competing with China and India over the next quarter century unless we have very bold, very dramatic change. That change has to be positive. It has to be a better future with better answers and better solutions, because you have to rally the American people so that you get a 70 or 80% majority willing to go through the change, or you can't get it done. Such a change has to occur at 513,000 elected offices. It can't be done by the President. It can't be done by the Congress. It can't be a Washington-centered process. And such a change has to be tripartisan. You have to bring together Democrats, Republicans, and independents to create a red, white, and blue future, not a red versus blue future, because you'll never build a purely partisan majority big enough for this scale of change. I think the closest parallel is the rise of the progressive movement from 1896 to 1916, when Democrats and Republicans alike came to the conclusion that you had to modernize government to meet the modern world. I hope each of you will look at what we're doing on health issues. I hope you'll go to healthtransformation.net and look at what we've done to try to rethink the entire process to get to a better system of a 21st century, intelligent, personal health system focusing on wellness, prevention, early testing, chronic disease management by the patient, and a very sophisticated approach of continuous improvement to reduce cost and improve outcomes. I hope on other issues you'll go to American Solutions and consider signing up to stay in touch with us. We want to build with every person of every background in every community, because it's the only way we're going to do this. A system capable of achieving safety, prosperity, and freedom for our children and our grandchildren, so that we can successfully continue to lead the world through the next half century, in the hope that ultimately over time we will have a country like China become a democracy. We'll have a chance to live in peace and freedom with all of our neighbors. But in the interim, if the world is going to be dangerous, it is far better for our children and far better for our grandchildren if we are the most productive, most prosperous, and safest country in the world. And that, I think, is the moral cause to which each of us has to reach in this kind of a difficult time. Thank you very, very much.